The opinions expressed on the Custody Queen Show are for informational purposes only and are not a substitute for personal, professional legal advice. The persons discussed are fictional and not based on actual clients.
Thought it was love, had kids in between. You can count on us, we're the Custody Queens. Yeah, you can count on us, we're the Custody Queens.
Good morning, everybody, Go Country listeners. It is Kristen and Sam, your favorite and only Custody Queens. Today we have Xinia Williams here with us. She is a recurring guest and part of our Custody Queens team joining us today.
Thank you for being here.
Good morning, everybody.
All right, let's get into the book of CQ. Kristen, just so everyone knows, Kristen's looking at me a little weird because I'm desperately trying not to say happy Saturday. And I'm going to say it. So happy Saturday, everyone. Kristen's going to pull out the CQ book, which is a book of 1,000,000 questions. And we're going to make all of us feel a little awkward to hopefully entertain you guys this morning.
Yeah, we'll just start out with some icebreakers, and then we will get into the show. And we have some fun listener emails. We love getting emails from you guys. Questions, personal, professional, we love them. We're into them, so bring them on. But, you know, we're going to make Xinia feel a little bit uncomfortable. And in this pink book of CQ, there's, I don't know, a couple thousand questions. But I am going to find I'm going to find one question that makes her feel a little uncomfortable, because that's what I do best. Well, this is a good one. Do you think people, including yourself, live up to their full potential?
Yes, if they choose to.
Well, let's elaborate a little bit more on that.
Well, I feel like your full potential changes as you grow older. So you could at one point and you could not at another.
All right, that's fair. That's fair. I think that I'll speak for like the general population. I think that people get comfortable and we as a whole may not reach our full potential. But I do agree with you that I reach my full potential at times in my life, and there's other times that, you know, we'd probably all like to erase, especially those years that were presented on MySpace. You know, for everyone listening that had MySpace. Where
you would have definitely been one of my top 8 friends.
Unless you, like, pissed me off and then my headline was something targeted at you.
Oh, yikes.
I was the worst client, you know, if my younger self was the client and I was the attorney. But yeah, I mean, sometimes when you Google and, you know, old MySpace pops up and you're like, how do I get rid of this era of my life?
It's fabulous.
But I would feel like that for the most part, now that I'm older, I'm doing a better job, but there's still periods of the year that I fail miserably.
Well, you know, with MySpace, so I was on MySpace and then I stopped being on social media completely until you made me a Facebook.
Well, yeah, she didn't even know how to log in.
I still don't. I can only auto log in from the work computer or from my cell phone.
Your face. Your face doesn't log you in?
No.
Passwords?
No, I have no idea. I don't even know my password.
Well, and the funniest thing about Facebook, because, you know, I think as I've gotten older, Instagram, I was very resistant to Instagram for a while because I didn't really know how to work it. And I hate the 10 picture max thing because I use Facebook as basically a virtual photo album. But I was resistant. Sam was way more into Instagram. And I would see a friend request come through and I'd say, oh, they're friends with Sam. So I'd automatically accept them. And I would get some very interesting messages and some, you know,
I'm surrounded by interesting people. Always. Of all kinds.
All right, Sam. Xinia, do you want to ask Sam one?
Sure. Do you tend to follow your heart or your head?
Oh, I saw that one. It's a good one. Sam's more of a head.
I'm a total head case. Yeah, I would say out of the two, my head probably more than my heart.
And I'm the opposite. I'm more my heart than my head, even though my head's telling my heart, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. I still do it.
I think personally myself, I would be a heart person before, but I think now I'm more of a head person.
Well, yeah, I mean, and so look, my head takes suggestions from my heart. It just sometimes they get denied, okay?
See, I'm the opposite, and my head gets denied, even though my head should win.
That's funny. That's a good one. All right, Kristen. Ugh, I can't ask you that. What do you hate about the internet?
What I hate about the internet is that stuff is there forever. Okay? Like MySpace. It's obviously a very valuable tool like Google. You can get answers to questions immediately, like whether or not an orca has ever killed anybody. But
Which they haven't in the wild.
I love that you can literally Google anything or buy anything at the tap of a one-touch, finger. But what I hate is that the internet controls so much of my life, when I let it. Like social media, shopping, ads,
It's a time sucker,
It
for sure.
is a time sucker, and I think that if you don't get a hold of it, it can really affect a lot of aspects in your life. When I
agree.
can't sleep, this is where I go down rabbit holes. When I can't sleep, I'll start, watching something, and then I start looking up something, and then next thing I know, I'm like in a 2-hour deep dive looking on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
But I think that it prevents you from living in the present sometimes.
I agree.
I would say that it's made our youth lazy. And I sound like an old person right now, but I am getting older. But it's made it so convenient for people to get answers instead of doing the work to find them. You can ask a kid now how to go to the library and find a book. They won't know how to tell you. They'll probably YouTube it and figure it out.
No, it is very, very, very true.
So you're losing some life skills by having it so easily accessible.
I do agree with that. But then sometimes I'm also fascinated when my 2-year-old goes on YouTube and says Paw Patrol movie and literally puts on his own movie. So it's life skills at some point, but I do agree that the internet, it's time sucking. I think that it prevents you from going outside and, learning things. But then when I can't figure out how to fold up my stroller, in the Disneyland parking lot because I'm by myself, I can YouTube how to fold the stroller.
Right.
So it's definitely a catch-22, but I do agree that it has an effect on our youth and not forcing kids to make mistakes, learn to recover from those mistakes, to not make them again,
in writing.
In writing, yeah. I mean, it's crazy that I, again, use my 2-year-old. He can barely hold a crayon to the paper, but he's telling an iPad what to do.
He's uploading the software.
I did have to remove One Touch off my Amazon because Riley was just ordering herself very expensive stuff.
That's amazing.
And she has expensive taste like me, so she's like, "Look, Mom, I got the same facial stuff as you." And I'm like, "Where did you get that?" "Oh, Amazon." And I'm like, "Wow, you bought that for yourself." We were removing that from your iPad.
That's amazing. All right, so let's get into today's episode a little bit. So Xinia is going to tell us a little bit about what has been going on in her personal life, and we are absolutely grateful that you are willing to share this information as family law attorneys. I think it is really important that everyone understands that we all go through different challenges, struggles, and different roads in life. So if you want to share a little bit about your experience.
Well, I mean, people start realizing things, but I am going through a divorce, and it got filed this year. But God willingly, it will hopefully be settled before the end of the year. That's best case scenario.
Yeah, I bet that's a relief.
Correct.
Have you found it challenging with your lawyer self, trying to guide the process rationally and reasonably with your personal self on the left side as a mother going through this process? Have you found it challenging to balance the two?
Absolutely. I tell myself every day to give myself grace. It wasn't an easy decision to make. You go through the steps to get there, to finally make that decision to do it. And every time I want to react to something because my co-parent isn't acting in the best way for our children, I have to take a step back and what do I tell my clients? And I just keep telling myself, would I be acting in a way that I'm telling my clients to not act? And that really stops me from overreacting or exploding as much as, it'd be easier.
It'd be easier to write that text message sometimes where you get to vent and also put the other parent in their place. I could see how that would be much easier, but then with your professional experience, that may not get you very far.
And sometimes it's going to fall on deaf ears, so why do it? And I tell my clients all the time, if that message, whatever message you're sending, if it's not going to address or fix an issue, then you don't need to send it.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, it's like, what is the outcome that you are looking for? Does this statement, communication lead you to that outcome or towards that outcome? And I think that oftentimes, if you're being honest with yourself, what you want to say probably actually takes you a step back from that outcome, and it kind of turns you the other way.
Yeah, it might be self-serving or give you some gratification for a minute after. We're like, oh, I just got that off my chest. But what really did it achieve?
And I think one of the things I've learned is getting out my emotions to someone who doesn't care about my emotions is not going to solve the problem and bring up, if I'm trying to make a point, I need to make the point and not, because then that person's going to piggyback off of my emotions instead of the point I'm trying to make. And that defeats the purpose of us having this conversation.
Very true.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And, again, thank you for sharing and being willing to share, because the truth is we as attorneys, we're all human. We all go through different things in our life. My parents are divorced. We've all kind of seen some stuff and been through some stuff. And so it gives us each different layers to help our clients, right? And so this is not to take your example, but I'm about to take your example. It is a way for us to kind of reset and look at it from other angles. We're very used to having our attorney hat on. And so to be able to kind of turn that around and say, okay, how does it feel to be kind of in a different position? It's very eye-opening for all of us.
Yeah, I think that this is what's so unique about the Custody Queens team is we all have walked different paths of life, and we are all currently walking different paths, but we provide each other with guidance and life experience that each other may not have. So for instance, I have children and I am really struggling with the work-mom life balance. Sam knows what it's like to be a child with divorced parents. And now we have Xinia, who's opening up and actually sharing the process with us as it's happening. And I really do thank both of them for sharing these experiences with us, because I think it makes not just people listening, better for it. I think it makes me a better attorney when I hear, from Sam about how holidays can be divided a little bit better for someone that may have experienced it. And then when I talk to you, about similar issues, I think it not only helps me personally, but it makes us such a unique team of life experience and what we represent, the education, the how do we move on from here. And I'm very grateful that this team that we have can present this to our listeners and our clients, because it's very, very unique. And life experience is what makes you better at what you do.
Definitely. And I don't know how more you can say that. I keep saying, well, now I got some real life experience on what I'm telling my clients to do.
Yeah, so when you say, trust me, I get it, I know this is hard, you truly know exactly what they're going through.
Right, I've been through the steps. I went through the therapy with my co-parent, soon to be ex-husband. I went through all the different phases to get to the point where I am at now. And I think what I've learned is that I needed to put me first, because I can't be my best self for my children, for myself, if I don't put me first. And it's not selfish. It's prioritizing your mental health, prioritizing what you have to do, and you become better for it.
I always say you cannot pour from an empty glass, right? So, and that's just something that I know that we've all worked on over the last couple of years is taking time for ourselves, because it makes us a better parent, it makes us a better lawyer, a better teacher, a better educator, and a better negotiator, to be honest. But I have to tell myself, I think I was just telling you guys, over lunch today, that I have to tell myself that things that I say to the kids when I'm tired, it's mostly tired, or frustrated, or spread so thin, that I say things that I would ream my client for. So right. I have to put myself in check, but when I hear you guys talk about it, I'm like, okay, I really need to listen to what these girls are telling me as well, because it makes us better for it.
Yeah, and it's kind of a collaboration of different experiences. And I think the point is true, right? Like, we're all human. Sometimes we may be giving advice and then you go, okay, but like as a human, maybe you would think that, you know, as a client, I may be wanting to act a different way. Well, that's exactly the point, right? And that's why you need an attorney and you need someone to help advise you through the process. You don't always have to be represented by an attorney per se, but you need advice, and likely having an attorney is your best bet. But it's a different hat that you're wearing at that time in your life. And so to have an attorney that tells you shouldn't say that, it's like the good person on your shoulder saying, don't do that. It's better for you not to. And you ultimately make the decision as to what you do. And you're living your life. You can take my advice and say, no, thanks, Sam. That doesn't sound great. I'm going to go the other way. But the point is, we're trying to tell you based on our experiences, both personally and professionally, and our knowledge of the law and what's going on in court, what type of things can you choose to help you produce the outcome that you're looking for. And there is a set way to do it.
Right. And I learned this very early on because I went forward and I filed by myself because I do this every day. So why wouldn't I just do it by myself? And I learned from the very first time that I spoke to the other side's attorney, I need someone to speak for me. I can speak very well, but there's a certain, even though I'm maybe emotionally more mature about it going on right now, there's still, I mean, your co-parent knows how to get to you. Mm-hmm. And so even speaking to the attorney, I realized I'm too emotional for this. And I got an attorney.
But see, the fact that you recognize that early on, it's very, very important. And you have to recognize when you are too emotionally attached to anything to be able to look at with a clear, level-headed mind. And that's something I work on.
And I mean, you're an unstoppable attorney, right? So you're not someone that can't get on the phone with opposing counsel. You're in court day in and day out. You're litigating. You're very experienced. You know what you're doing. You're great at advising clients. But it's different when it's you.
Correct.
It just is.
No, I totally agree. I totally agree. Xinia, what do you think has been the most challenging part of this process?
Being the bigger person. Honestly, just being the bigger person, because I've had pettiness from the other side. And I'm not one to put my stuff on social media. I'm not one to tell everybody.
You don't tell the whole story of what's going on Facebook or Instagram?
No.
In writing?
I let them tell whatever story they want to tell, and anyone who's actually in my life and cares about me, if they're concerned, they'll ask. There's no need for me to tell everybody what's going on.
I respect that greatly.
But it's harder, but I do think being the bigger person has probably been the hardest part, but it's been the most rewarding. And I know at the end of the day, you know, karma's a bee. So
I agree.
You reap what you sow.
Okay, so other than being the bigger person, what do you think, like, because when I think of if this were to happen to me, like the communication, would you be as flexible as we want to tell our clients to be and our listeners? Have all of those things been as easy to you as the advice you give?
For me to do it, yes, absolutely, because I'm in a position where I would want that flexibility back, so I'm going to give that to someone. But has it been easy? No, because, again, it has to take two to want to be able to be that flexible. So I do what I can, and you take it one day at a time.
Is there anything that you have gone through in this process that you would add to your arsenal of education to clients that are going through this that you may not have thought of previously when advocating for clients, but now that it's happened to you, what other tools have you added to your arsenal?
Honestly, I tell my clients, go to therapy. Even though you don't think you need it.
You need it.
You need it. You don't even know that you need it, and you need it. Even if it's, and I think as women, often we don't want to talk to someone else, or even as a Latina, it's not in our culture to go to therapy. Because then we feel like we're complaining to someone, but that's not the case. You have valid feelings and thoughts that need to be expressed that you've maybe never dealt with in another realm. So having a professional validate, I guess, I don't know if validate's the right word, but at least
to validate
what you're feeling and say, you're entitled to feel that way.
Yeah, and I think it's not just expressing yourself, it's also being able to have an outlet to process it. and a safe outlet, by the way, based on the fact that there's a privilege.
There's a privilege, yeah.
So you're not going to run into these real serious scenarios where you're talking to your friend who then really isn't your friend because
And
they
text
go
their friend.
and it creates a mess. Trust me, it happens, even when you think it won't. So it is also a safe place to privately get out your emotions, and I think that's wonderful.
No, I agree with it all. I have learned to be a better attorney just from watching friends of mine co-parent. You know, one of my best friends and her co-parenter, ex-husband, the way that they have handled it, and it is mostly because she's been the bigger person throughout the years, but I mean, they will go out to dinner together after softball game. You know, they alternate the holidays. Now, it's not that didn't take years to get there.
Right.
But from the onset, you know, I would tell her, do you want my attorney hat, you know, giving you advice, or do you want your best friend giving you advice? Because it's two different hats sometimes.
Correct.
Right.
And sometimes I know that I just need to be a friend there to listen and help her process. And sometimes I need to say, no, this is not going to help you get what you want to achieve.
Right.
But I tell her all the time, I said, watching the way that you have handled this over the years has taught me to be a better attorney because it can be done. And then I have friends that, you know, I've watched from afar that have given me advice on things not to do, you know, because you see it happening in front of you. And when you're involved in those experiences and relationships, I think it just, again, gives us more tools in our arsenal to help our clients achieve the goals that they want and to live their best lives so that their kids can live their best lives.
I think you brought up something that's really important is like there's a trust there that's been built over time, and it doesn't happen overnight, and it's a hard thing to do something that you don't want to do on repeat, hoping one day you get the result. And the result is candidly never guaranteed, but I can almost for sure guarantee you that if you don't go towards that and you don't try to build that trust and you don't try to co-parent with the impossible co-parent, you for sure won't succeed. So you have to start inching away, and you can almost build this reverse trust. They trust that this is how you're going to react. They trust that this is how you're going to co-parent, and they trust that they're not going to get a rise out of you. And so then their defense system starts to go down, and it opens up a greater kind of level of communication for you guys.
Yeah, and this applies to every relationship, not just people going through a divorce or separation or custody. This happens with friendships. This happens with working relationships. This happens with, you know, people that are happily married in a healthy marriage. There is that trust that has to be built, and you have to give yourself time and grace and life experience. And in my opinion, one of the most effective things that you can get from any relationship is to be accountable. Not be scared to say, I'm sorry, I didn't handle that appropriately. It's okay to not react appropriately sometimes, but you have to be able to acknowledge that. I always tell my husband all the time that there are many times that I don't respond the way that I should because I'm tired or I'm overworked or whatever it is. I just had a bad day. But I am always the first one to recognize that the way I handled it was not the best way. It may take me a day, but I am 100% aware that I screwed up. And then I try not to do it again. Now, you know.
Yeah, and we're all not perfect, right? And it's just about continuing to make that forward progress with your co-parent. And I don't like to say, oh, your marriage failed. I think that that's a really bad way to categorize people going through divorce. And whatever term you use for your marriage that's for you, and that's for you. But that whatever happened doesn't mean you can't then build a co-parenting relationship. Even if your divorce completely would never want to be in the same room as that person again, that doesn't mean that you give up your co-parenting relationship. It's a totally new room.
It's finding that comfortable dynamic again. And at some point you chose to be with that person, and there was something that clicked at one time. And it's sometimes just having to remember that you chose this person, and then taking a step back and refocusing on, we have to find a new dynamic.
Right.
And, something we've talked about a lot is putting our kids first. And that should always be the forefront of any divorce that has children or any custody dispute.
So if you are a listener that is going through this process and you want to have a consult with Xinia Williams, please make sure that you fill out a form on custodyqueensonair.com, and we will make sure that we get that set up ASAP. You can also reach out and have an appointment with Samurai as well. You can fill out a web form, or you can call us at 1-800-419-7772. That is 1-800-419-7772. So in summary, Xinia, if you could leave our listeners with one tip on what this process has taught you, what would it be?
Work on yourself and everything else will fall into place.
I love it.
Love it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we had such a great Saturday with you, and we hope you were happy and enjoyed this conversation with us. We look forward to seeing you next Saturday and every Saturday. And always remember,
Let love rule.